What's going on, everybody? Caden here, KGC here with the Spokane Man podcast, and today I am joined by just a overall great guy. He called me on my graduation day, and I just want to say thank you for what he does for not only country music, but what he just does for just the world in general. My buddy from Fox 4 Facebook is what we all know you by, my buddy Mr. Barry Miller. Barry, how you doing, sir?
Good. Fox 4, Facebook. Wow, that's a flashback. Last time I was with Fox 4, it's been a while. Now I'm a full-time history teacher, but it was fun when I was with Fox 4 in the TV business for sure.
How'd you
So,
get into that?
well, I had every intention of going into TV to be a broadcast newsman in front of the camera. I did that for a short time. And then I got behind the scenes as a producer, as an assignment manager, which was cool because I got to interview, like we're going to talk about, like the Oaks. But as years progressed, I found out that being in the TV business, unless you're like a main anchor, a main weather person, if you're not one of them, it doesn't pay the bills. So I got out of that and got into teaching, and that's where I'm at currently. But yeah, TV was fun because I got to interview a lot of people, and then kind of off that, I piggybacked and started doing my own interviews for my own stuff. And yeah, it's a good experience.
So, what was the turning point in your TV career when you finally said, when you looked at that sheet of paper or whatever they gave you that said, "Oh, I'm interviewing so and so," and you're like, "Oh man, I get to talk to this person."
Well, they never really gave me a sheet of saying you're interviewing this person, you're interviewing that person, celebrity wise. The celebrity interviews I would set up because, especially if they were country, they'd be some of my favorite artists. And I would set them up on behalf of the station. I'd go to my boss, I'd be like, hey, so and so is coming to town, can I get an interview? He's like, yeah, go for it. I don't know if we'll use it, but it'd be just good to have for you. So I'm like, okay. So, and that's how that got started. And trying to think, who did I think I interviewed? And I don't have all these interviews, but I'm just thinking I interviewed Doug Stone. Somewhere I've got an interview with the late great BJ Thomas, Bill Gaither, Ricky Skaggs. And then, of course, the Oaks, and which is what we're going to talk about.
So, you know, this is a great story that we were talking on the phone about what we're going to discuss. And
Right.
Barry, he's such a great guy, and Barry, I'm seriously so lucky to call you a friend and call you a brother. But I'm also kind of jealous, man. He was on a country music cruise with the Oak Ridge Boys, and he was on the country music cruise, and he got to sing Little Things with the Oak Ridge Boys. Tell us how that came to be about.
Well, this was, I think it was 2013. Maybe it was 14, but it was around 13 or 14. This was actually not the country music cruise. For 2 years before the country music cruise, the Oaks did their own cruise for the fans. They mentioned it on their message board or whatnot. They put it on their Facebook, like, if you want to be part of the Oaks cruise. And I thought that would be a really cool dream come true for a fan. So I'm like, sign me up. So I went on the first official Oak Ridge Boys cruise. I didn't go on the second one. So prior to that, and they knew me, I'd known them by that time. I'd known them for quite a while, and they'd always know me when I'd come to the concerts or whatever. And I'm thinking in my mind when I'm going on the cruise, I'm like, this would be a good time if they're having fans request songs, why not just throw out Little Things? And prior to the cruise, I was emailing Joe, and I saw him backstage at a concert here in Florida a few months before the cruise. I'm like, hey, that cruise coming up, are we going to have Little Things? Are we going to make an appearance? And he's like, oh man, you're really killing me with it. So fast forward to the cruise, February of 2013. I meet Joe and the boys on the boat, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, hey, Joe, we're gonna do Little Things. And he smiles or whatever. And the first concert of the cruise, there was a couple concerts. The first concert of the cruise was just kind of like talk, hey, we're glad you're here. They joked around a little bit, talked, and they're like, all right, you guys want to hear some music? What do y'all want to hear? And Joe looks around. He's like, wait a minute. Here's Barry. Barry, come up on stage. And I'm like, what the hell? In my mind, I'm like, oh God, what's going on? And he's like, just so you know, this is Barry. He's one of our diehard fans or something. He's like, Barry has been on my can prior to this cruise for months asking if we would do Little Things. And he said, I said this, I don't remember saying it, but he's like, Barry said, if you don't think you guys can do it, I can do it. Well, how about it? And he gives me the mic. And I just stand there. I'm like, wait a minute. Joe just gave me the mic and I'm getting ready to hopefully not screw this great song up. And I'm singing with the Oak Ridge Boys. So I'm just frozen for like a half second. And he looks over at Ronnie Fairchild and he's like, Ronnie, remember Little Things? And Ronnie gives a thumbs up and I look around. I'm like, guys, you want to help me here? And I hear Chris Golden kick it off. And the rest is history. And there's a video on this of YouTube. And my hand, I'm gripping that mic tight because I'm shaking. Because I'm like, I'm here singing with the biggest country group of all time. In my mind, I'm like, Barry, don't screw this up. And, I start the song and then I'm praying that the guys will come in. I'm like, I don't want to be doing this solo. I'm like, come on, guys. In my head, I'm saying this. And of course, they came in and we got through the song and the people went nuts because I think they knew that I could do it. But when I was hitting all the lines and little things like the whoa-ohs and the high ranges and stuff, they were just like screaming. And then it's funny, I had to direct Richard on his part because he didn't know where his little bass licks went. He had forgotten. So I was just kind of pushing him along. You'll see in that. But yeah, so that's the story of Barry and Little Things. And I will say, not to toot my own horn, they had not done that song since it was a single. So since the 80s, they had not done that song. After we did it that night, a few months later, they worked it up. And for 3 years after that, they had it in the shows. And they've rested the song now because it's a hard song to do. You got to push it. You got to push the air out there a little bit.
So when you were doing it, did you ever think to yourself, man, I don't know who's gonna say, hey, look at this man, just a regular American citizen, just singing with the Oak Ridge Boys. Did you ever have in your head like, oh God, what is gonna come after this? Like, what are people gonna say?
Well, no, because like I said, I'm on stage and I'm scared to death. I'm just like gripping the microphone, just praying to God it doesn't fall out of my hand or I don't do anything stupid. And I'm looking around and I'm kind of in a dazed look, just singing it. And people are, getting into it and singing because they knew Little Things. Of course, like I said, the Oaks hadn't done it in years, but, and after the song ends or whatever, everybody claps and stands up and Joe just kind of looks at me and Dwayne just kind of looks at me. Dwayne comes up, gives me a big hug. Richard high fives me. Golden high fives me. Joe puts his arm around me. And then I got to say something. And I think they were scared because I started talking after we finished singing and I got to say a little something about them to all the fans, like a big thank you. I think I said, these guys do more for their fans than anyone in country music. And I said, can we please give them a big round of applause? And yeah, so.
And that's something I love about you, man, is that, the fact that you don't toot your own horn about that as often as one might should, that's amazing.
No, it was, like I said, it was a great experience. And the reason I don't toot my own horn, because I'm just like, I'm still like, I just can't believe I actually got to sing with my idols that I grew up with. I mean, who gets to do that? And I'm still like, when I watch the video, I'm still like,
Well, that's a lot like with me having William Lee Golden on this podcast,
Right.
because William Lee, he's such an idol of mine, and William Lee is such a great guy, and you got to have him on your show. Talk to us about how you got William.
I did. I've for a while, I've always said that I wish every member of the group would write a book. Of course, Joe has written several books on the Oaks. He wrote a picture book. He's just written several books, even children's books, and he's also written some good books on the Oaks. Then Richard came out with From Elvis to Elvira. And after that, I'm like, I wonder if Golden will ever come out, because there's a lot of things with Golden stories, and I don't want to give the book away, but there were stories that I often wondered about. Of course, one being about the separation that happened in the 80s. I never knew the whole story on that. And I kept saying in my mind, I wish somebody, Golden, would write a book to talk about the whole, what happened when the separation happened. And sure enough, he did. And a lot of other great stories that I did not know about. And I read it and I'm like, you know what? I want to have William Lee on my little podcast. And so I reached out to Sandy Brokaw, who is their agent, who I've talked to a lot because he's helped me get a lot of any interview on the Oak Ridge Boys that I've gotten. That is big thank you to the Brokaw Company, because they've helped me out there, Sandy Brokaw and the great people over there. And I called him about William's book. I'm like, hey, Sandy, with William's book coming out, I'd really love to have him. So he got back with me and he's like, William would love to have you on would love to talk to you. So we got that arranged. And if you know anything about William Lee Golden, he likes to talk. And so I would just ask him a question and he would just go on for whatever, took that question, whatever. And we ended up doing, it was a little over an hour on him. So, but it was a good experience. And I've interviewed after William, I've interviewed all the boys now.
Have you ever interviewed Dwayne?
I have not. And that's somebody who would be great to get. I've interviewed, and honestly, the only two single guys I've interviewed have been Richard and Golden.
Yeah.
And Richard is, of course, I think if you're a diehard Oaks fan, he's basically does all the interviews, the press interviews for the boys. He does a lot of the TV and radio interviews. So if you have a concert coming to town, you'll hear him usually on like a podcast or a radio station giving the interview about the concert.
So when did you get moved on to the Oak Ridge Boys? What made you love them?
Well, that's interesting. I'll be honest. I started listening to them when I was 3 years old. When I was 3 years old, I'll never forget it. My grandparents came over to the house with a record with a new record player I got. And the record came out in 1981, and that was a Fancy Free album. And everybody knows that was the album with Elvira on it. So as a 3-year-old in my diapers, I was dancing to Elvira, and that started it all.
Can you give us a little Elvira?
Oh, I would, but I can't do it because the only person that can do that is the boys, and I don't want to. Nah, I'm good. Honestly. There's only one person that can do that song, and that's the Oak Ridge Boys.
Well, you sure hit Little Things right out of the park, and I don't know if you watch baseball. Do you like baseball?
I do. Yeah, I get into it more like when it comes down to the World Series, but I do have my teams.
Who are your teams? Obviously, since you're from Florida, you got to.
Obviously, yeah, Florida, the Devil Rays. Probably, I like the Braves. And I know the Oaks have gotten to sing a lot for national anthem for the baseball game. If you're an Oaks historian, you look on YouTube and I think it's like 1984, 1985, you can see a clip of them singing the national anthem for the World Series.
So what was the very first Oak Ridge Boys you concert you ever attended?
That would be when I was in second grade for a short time, my family and I moved to Huntsville, Alabama. This was back, we moved in August, actually July or August of 1987. Okay, and that was right when Steve joined the boys. And of course, we hear on the radio, Oak Ridge Boys are coming to town, October 31st, 1987, Von Braun Civic Center. And that was actually my first concert. It was the Oak Ridge Boys, the Forrester Sisters, and Kyle Petty. And that was the Fast Lane tour. And that was the first time I got to meet him. Went backstage. They were promoting Where the Fast Lane Ends. And they also had a book. Have you heard of the original book that came out on them in the 80s?
I think I heard of, yeah, I think
you should get it. You should get it. It's called The Oak Ridge Boys, Our Story. That came out that year in 1987. They're promoting that. And also they had just released Heartbeat with the first album with Steve. So yeah, that concert, I remember the opening song. They opened up with a song called Come By Here. And from that, I believe, and it's weird how I remember all this, they did Come By Here. Then I believe they went into True Heart and then This Crazy Love. I remember the first 3 songs that night that they did. And then of course, the end of the night, they closed with Elvira, Bobby Sue, your typical closing songs, but yeah.
So you're in agreement with me, for 83 years old, and hell, for all of the Oak Ridge Boys' age, they look amazing for their age. But it really shocks me when Paul Martin, one of my best friends, hi Paul, hi Rockland Road.
Hey guys.
I love you guys, and I know Barry does too, and hello Ace and whoever might watch this. But it caught me off guard to see William Lee Golding sprinting across that stage.
It's funny. I was just about to say that. And I don't know if you talked to him about that, but I mentioned that. I said, that's the first thing that, I see you at the Kentucky State Fair, just running laps around the stage. And he talks about, in his book, how he does sit-ups every day.
He's inspired me I do 10 every morning, and then I go on a 3-mile walk every morning because of William Lee Golden. This is a really funny true story that you probably don't care. But before that, I'm 18 years old and I don't do any of that. I didn't do any of that. I talked to William Lee Golden. After the interview, I uploaded the interview. I got down and I did 5 push-ups. And I was so embarrassed that I hadn't already started doing that at my age because of how, all the podcast stuff. I'm like, man, Golden just, and every now and again, I'll tweet Golden and talk to Golden and be like, Golden, you really put me to shame, buddy. And he'll just laugh and say,
And I think that's, and that's why they keep going, because they're in good health and they all take care of themselves.
Oh yeah.
They all, I think each one of them does a little bit of, physical activity to, keep them going.
I know that Joe has a little bit of a foot problem. I know that he's not as, he doesn't jump around as much, and I've heard him talk about it.
Yeah. And I know Richard, now see back, I remember back in the 80s and 90s, even in the early 2000s, Richard was a big runner. He actually, I remember when we were going to the concert, we got there early that night. I remember seeing him run. This was back in the 80s, around the arena in his sweats. He was running, doing a run.
So when on that Little Things video, back to the Little Things, I'm sorry, but back to Little Things, you're up front, and Richard's not the only one that was standing up. Do you know what was wrong with Richard at that?
Yeah, he had been on a trip when they were on vacation earlier that year, back in January, and he had fallen. I think he tripped over a speed bump, I believe, in the parking lot or something, and he did something with his foot. and the whole cruise, he was in a mobile scooter. And if you go back from like February, March, and April, he was just sitting in a stool on stage.
But does that foot still give him problems, or is it?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, but that's why he was sitting on the cruise, because he had hurt his foot or his leg or something. Yeah.
So talk to us about, you interviewed Richard for your Fox 4 Facebook. Talk to us about, and that was during the Christmas tour. What was that about? How did well, not how did that come to be about? You
Yeah.
obviously told us that, but what was that experience like?
It was good. It was good. You know, it's funny because each of the Oaks are unique in their own way. Joe, you know, like we talked about, he's the spokesman for the group on stage. He can, you know, before his foot was giving him trouble, I remember he would do, you know, laps around the stage, jump and all that stuff. Dwayne, you know, big song guy, you know, lead singer on stage. Golden and Richard. Richard is is very quiet, and but once you talk to him, like during an interview or whatever, he opens up and boom, he's ready to go.
So, out of all the interviews you've done, did you think that you felt more at home with when you were doing with the Oak Ridge Boys, or what was that like when you were interviewing? What was the feeling that you got when you were interviewing those boys?
Well, when I was interviewing, which one? All of them or
Just both of them. Just well, okay, all of them. Sorry.
okay. Yeah, I mean, they make you feel so at ease, like, hey, we'll just roll with you, just ask us whatever. And with Richard, he was really good, you know, because when I interviewed Richard, his book had just come out. So I had a whole bunch of questions about the book, and then we talked about the show that was coming to town, which was really good. And he has a great radio voice. So
Oh yeah, and trust me, if you've, and you have a pod, or you, I want to. Would you call it a podcast that you had William on?
yeah, it was a pod video cast. You know, I'm trying to get better at making these, doing these more often. I'm working on one now. Trying to get the Rockland Road. I almost said Martin Family Circus, but yeah, Rockland Road and some others on there. So, and as that happens, you know, like I said, we'll let you know.
Yeah. So where can everybody go to keep up with you and to keep up with Barry Miller?
If you just want to go to YouTube and search Barry Miller, you'll find me on there. I'm updating my channel now as I speak, so I'm hoping to get it changed, have a permanent channel. But if you just Google Barry Miller Oak Ridge Boys, you'll find me on there and find some of the interviews I did with the Oak Ridge Boys. So yeah.
Where can people keep in contact with you?
You know, Twitter. You can just find me on Twitter. I tweet out sometimes. I think if you want to put my Twitter link up there, yeah, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. That's the best way.
And as we are recording this, Barry, I'm a big fan of Barry Miller. Obviously, I love everything Barry does. Thank you so much, Barry, for being on here today. But the one important question I have to ask you is, when do I get to be on your show?
Hey, anytime the door is open, man, we'll get you on. We'll talk Oak Ridge Boys. We'll do whatever.
Barry, I love you, buddy. I really do. And next week, I'm gonna get Ronnie on. I got a Ronnie Fairchild on.
I saw that today. I saw that you were talking to him about coming on, so I cannot wait to hear that. That's talk about history and the Oak Ridge Boys. I'm sure that guy has some stories.
Isn't he the longest out of all of them? Isn't he the longest?
Yeah, I think he started, and you could check with him on this. I believe he started in 79 or 80. So he's the longest member of the Mighty Oaks band. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been there for 4 decades. And
Yeah.
his dad played before him.
Tommy Fairchild. Yep. And then I would say the next person in line to him would be Rex.
Rex?
Rex, yeah, the steel guitar player and fiddle player. Yeah,
How long's
he
he
would be
been
the
there?
next. I think probably since 99, 2000. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. So
What all great guys. And Barry, speaking about great guys, I'm still jealous that you still got to sing with the Oaks. And Barry, just thank you so much for what you do, not only for people that love Barry Miller, but for what you do with your mindset of, hey, let's keep going, let's not give up. And the fact that you're a history teacher, I have to ask you, are you teaching them the history of the Oak Ridge Boys?
no, not really, but I do have my Oak Ridge Boys moments in class where I will flare up a song, maybe Elvira or Love Song or something, just to get a rise out of them. I'm like, this is my kind of music, kids, and I'll just blast something up.
Well, you got to check with your boss to see, hey man, maybe you can teach them about the history of the Oak Ridge Boys.
Right. I'll have to check on that. I don't know how that would be considered history, but no,
Well,
yeah.
the history of
For
the
sure.
Oak Ridge Boys go back to 1945, and
Yep.
and so you can talk about how, how they were involved with the secret installation in the atomic bomb.
Yeah, the atomic bomb Manhattan Project. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we could implement that. So
See, I'm not. Hey, I'm not. I don't just. I'm a true Oak Ridge Boys fan at 18 years old. How about that?
you wanna write the curriculum for me on that and send it to me? Hey, have at it.
Hey, I got your number. You bet I'll text it to you.
There it go. Yeah, for sure.
But Barry, thank you so much again, man, for coming on here and something. Just continue to be you, man. And I know we don't. You're not really in the music business as far as like performing every night to millions of people, but you
Right.
still have a voice in the music community, and that's why I wanted you on here. And
Oh, thank you.
and,
Thank
and
you.
another reason is just because I follow everything you do. I'm not a stalker, but I do love me some Barry Miller, and I just want to say thank you for what you do, not only for music, but what you do for the Oak Ridge Boys and keeping uneducated people aware of the Oak Ridge Boys. And I think so highly of you, and you're a great guy, and I can't wait to get on your show and just talk with you. And have you seen any of the podcasts before me?
I did see. I got to go back and watch the William Lee Golden one, and I've seen a couple. I believe I saw the one. I saw. I think you posted the one about the Martin or the I'm gonna Rockland Road. So yeah,
Yeah,
good
Paul
stuff.
Martin. But
Good
if you
stuff.
ever if you ever need my help getting anybody on here, dude, I'm lit up for the next 3 weeks on these podcast things. So
So who do you have coming up?
well, like I mentioned, I have Ronnie Fairchild. I have Ron Moore Jr. He's a painter on Twitter. He's a very great painter, and I love.
Okay.
And then I have well, that's about it. And then my buddy Blind Joe, he's coming on to
Okay.
and interview his or to have his song on called Hardwood Floor. I'd suggest you get him on the show and and get Blind Joe on the podcast because he's a great singer, and I think that you and him would be get along very good. So Blind
Great.
Joe, if you watch this, hi, send me merchandise. And that goes for any of you artists too that ever look at my wardrobe and say, man, I wish you would represent an Elk Ridge Boys or a William Lee. I'm just kidding. But Barry, my friend, thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you.
and just thank you all so much for being a great guy. Spokane Man Podcast. Stay vigilant. Remember that the only things that bring us positivity in life is Christ. No matter how much the news is going to try and say otherwise, God is the answer for everything. Faith, family, and unity in music are the only things that can bring us together. Thank you for watching the Spokane Man podcast.